All right, this is Emad. He's our CEO of Licensed Structural Engineers. Today he's going to be answering some questions that we get by our customers to help you guys out.
Thanks, Kaylee. And this is Kaylee. Kaylee is one of the operations team member at QuiGig. She's helping out with answering hundreds of inbound calls. It's whether it's sales or customer service calls, and I'm happy to answer questions that people are asking you all the time, Kaylee.
Wonderful. So we're going to start off with our first question, which is if there's a crack in my foundation, does it always need to be repaired?
Um, so the answer is it depends. A lot of time, these cracks are by themselves, not the main problem, but they may just expose an underlying problem, which potentially could be because, like in Houston or in general in Texas, even Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, in all of those areas, there's a lot of expansive soil. So the cracks on the slab could indicate that there are structural damages to the slab because of volume changes of the soil underneath the slab. So in the long term, it can compromise the integrity of the superstructure of the house or any building on the slab unless they're supported by some piers. But there are also sometimes some cracks that are just very local, very isolated, and not a major problem. We do use some different techniques to develop to develop an analysis and understand what's going on with the slab. And if there is a need for support, we just pick that recommendation. One little thing I wanted to mention is it's important to make sure there's no rebar exposed. Slab rebars, if there's a crack that shows any rebar is exposed, that they call it a cancer for concrete rebar corrosion, because rebar is exposed to air, oxygen and moisture will corrode in the long term. They expand in volume 7-8 times of the original volume, and they cause cracks in the slab in the long term. So if you ever see any exposed rebars or even some reddish kind of color on the crack, which shows that it's likely rebar corrosion, then you have to take some action on it by protecting that crack from oxygen and moisture by using some epoxy protection or some other special type of protective material.
Okay, so our next question is why not get a free inspection by a foundation company versus choosing a paid inspection by an engineer?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So people ask, why would I hire you and pay you some hundreds of dollars if a foundation company is willing to do the inspection for my foundation for free? So the answer is, first of all, obviously, we do not have any conflict of interest. Our engineers are getting their payment for offering that service to inspect the foundation. Either way, we are neutral in terms of our financial interest, but the foundation companies, the free inspection of the slab is part of their sales process. So they do have a conflict of interest to get the foundation inspection, foundation repair job. So that's number one. And number two, we are the experts, in terms of being a licensed, and, because a slab is a structure, and a licensed engineer is licensed and experienced and educated to understand the slab from a very much deeper angle or level versus a foundation, which is a contractor, and they do not necessarily have the education or the technical qualifications, but they do have a lot of experience. And I don't mean to be, implying that they don't have any information or knowledge to share. It's just that technically they're not licensed, and eventually there has to be a licensed engineer. They would eventually involve an engineer to complete the repair process. They have to. But if you hire your own engineer independently, then you got your independent eye and you are your independent consultant to look at your foundation.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I see why we would need an engineer instead of a foundation company. So whenever it comes to reports and structural drawings, how would they know when they need a report versus when they need a drawing?
Yeah, so yeah, we have people who sometimes expect us to what is not appropriate for a report in the report, which we have to do the plans. Usually plans are a little more expensive, so people are trying to see if we could get a report and get everything done over through a report. And of course, there are times that the report is perfectly a complete platform, a good platform to communicate or provide the professional opinion. So really, the difference is whenever we have to provide details of any structural component, any structural frame, any structural footing, anything is structural, when we have to get into the details of that. Because so here's the thing, even though a contractor or even the homeowner, sometimes they say, we've done this in the past, we have a lot of experience, we exactly know how it is done. But the problem is, when an engineer is signing and sealing a document, they have to verify that the details of what they're certifying are clearly communicated, which means, for example, does it have to have 4 nails or does it have to have 6 nails? Does it have to have, the nails have to be at least 2.5 inch or 3.5 inch? Could it be done by nails, or it has to be actually bolts and nuts? Does it have to be metal connectors, or could it be just putting wood on wood and nailing them? So these details are part of the engineering recommendations that have to be communicated. So you cannot communicate all the joints and all the details of the framing of the structure in an engineering report. So probably half of our jobs are engineering reports and half of our jobs are right now engineering plans and drawings. But whenever it becomes listing some items or discussing a problem or providing directions about what should be your next step, but not about all the details, but rather just explaining, yes, you need to repair this foundation, or you need to fix the drainage problem around the slab, or you have to find basically a general contractor or a roof repair a contractor to fix your trusses in this part of the house where it is damaged or broken. So those are in terms of the actions that need to be taken, a list of things that need to be done. On those we could use a report, but whenever it becomes a matter of the details of the actual structure, it has to be so it happens often that we state in a report that we strongly recommend fixing the foundation, or maybe repairing the truss based on details approved by licensed engineer. So even though the report is by itself being signed and sealed by a licensed engineer, but it doesn't have the capacity, or it doesn't have the room for putting all those details. So we say, okay, we recommend getting plans from licensed engineer. So that's when we need the drawing. Yes, that's the answer.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So our last question is, are you local? From working in the call center, I personally can say, I usually tell customers, since we are a nationwide company, we have engineers stationed in all of these different cities, but those engineers have worked in those cities previously and we hire them through our company. So they're aware of local ordinances and codes, and we operate nationwide, but we really like to operate like we're local in each of those communities.
Yeah, exactly. So people, it matters for people to hire a local person, not just because they want to help their own local community, but also because some of the technical issues locally usually different. For example, if you're in Texas, you see a lot of issues with the soil, expansive soil and foundation cracks, slab foundations for homes. Then in California, it's usually a lot of other details. And then also we're dealing with the permit office. Everywhere the permit office has their own amendments and they have their own regulations. And even different states have, of course, their own regulations. So the way we're operating right now, we have engineers in several different states, and all the engineers who are working with us are local to their own community, exactly like you said. So they know their local environment, their local regulations. And we do know too. So now, because our office is dealing with a lot of the engineering work of these different regions, so we have become very familiar with a lot of those details. But at the end of the day, yes, we're both local. But what we're trying to do, and that's that was the idea of QuiGig, was to build a world-class infrastructure for providing professional services is still for local service professionals. So we are not taking that locality away from that service, but you're bringing in a nationwide or world-class infrastructure to support those local service professionals.
Yeah, so that's all the questions we have for today. If you guys have any questions for us, feel free to comment on this video or message us on social media. And we're going to be doing these weekly so we can get all those questions that you have out of the way.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Jaylee, and thank you guys for watching this video.